Hey guys, Dr. Baron Grutter here. In this video, I want to go over the workflow I use most of the time in D3Splint. I've covered a lot of this software in other videos, but more and more I'm doing lower flat planes, so mandibular flat plane appliances for patients. I won't get into the reasons for that. That's really a diagnostic decision one way or the other, but that's what I'm doing a lot more of. So I want to make a video. This is aimed for anyone that's interested in the software, but this is hopefully actually going to be aimed for my own assistants to learn from. And so I hope that it's something that you can also use to teach your assistants and have them use. Again, these videos and this series of videos I've made, I started over a year ago and I'm adding on today, is really intended to be a video you can play right as you are designing, okay? So that you can basically replicate what I'm doing on your own screen for your first couple times until the point where you no longer need me, and maybe it's one time. So anyway, the software is great. It is fairly intuitive. It does walk you through each step quite well. But beyond that, let's go ahead and excuse me, get right to it. I'm at home right now. There's going to be some background noise. I apologize. I don't have a headset with me at the moment. So hopefully the audio here is going to be acceptable. So, all right, let's get to it. All right, so the first thing I've mentioned before, this software is reliant on your own clinical judgment. So you're really responsible for the designs and how things are working. So that's why there's a checkbox, not for clinical use. All that means is that you are accepting responsibility, kind of like if you were to make one, a splint in your lab, the traditional method. There's no one verifying that what you've designed is acceptable. You are taking that responsibility. So by clicking this checkbox, I'm saying, yeah, I'm cool with that. There's a little checkbox right here for auto background. I'm not going to check that because I want you to see some things that happen, and I'll tell you what those steps are that could be done in the background, meaning this saves time. In this video, I mean, yeah, I want it to be quick, but at the same time, I want you to understand what's happening behind the scenes because it helps you to understand how these splints are designed. So I'm going to leave that unchecked for now. I'm going to drag this right here down. Well, there we go. I just don't like, there's no point in not having that stuff visible. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to be designing a mandibular flat plane. There's different designs, as you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and import my model. So I'm going to gray out some of this because, of course, confidentiality. But if I click here, it brings me to where I can find my documents. Right now, I don't think there's anything I need to hide. So however, over here there's bookmarks. As you're working through this multiple times, you can add bookmarks by simply getting to a folder and you can say add, and there it is. And then you can also subtract it. So I have two different folders. One's my digital impressions because every time we take a scan, it automatically dumps those into that folder. But what if we've already designed a splint or something and we want to design another one, or they're an ortho case or an implant? It doesn't matter. I have the folder, those models already moved out of that into a different folder. Well, the occlusal guard folder is one that's going to be kind of commonly sought after for me. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and click on digital impressions because this particular patient that I have not designed on, I hope the scans are good. If they're not, I'll probably just work through and accept it as is. But I haven't even looked at these scans to make sure they're going to be acceptable. So I hope they are. All right, so let's go ahead and click on this, and this is where it might get grayed out. All right, sorry, digital impressions, Carestream. I need to add one for my Omnicam scanner because I just recently got that networked to upload. So but that's why I have a folder specifically for that. Okay, so I'm now in this patient's folder. I'm going to select both the models by holding the shift button. It's backwards. I apologize for that. I had to step away for a second. So what I was getting at is that in this software, to select both things, I'm used to holding the control button to click another. Just hold the shift button. It doesn't matter. It's backwards from normal software. I don't know why. Click on import. And so now we're going to have our two sets of models. Okay? You can wheel them around. Now I'm going to refresh your memory. If you press the left button, all you're doing is changing what you are centered on, your point of interest on these models. If I right click, it allows me to, it allows me to do some other things as far as moving things around. But if I press and hold the wheel button, it allows me to wheel things around. And if I want to translate, move things left or right, I hold the shift button and click the wheel button. That's the little wheel, scroll wheel. I don't know If you don't have a wheel, if you're not using traditional mouse like that, I honestly don't know what the replacement is for those. So you'll have to figure it out on your own. Yeah, or just get a $9, $7 USB mouse from Amazon. Okay, so we need to go ahead and follow the workflow on the left side of the screen. We're going to be working from top to bottom. Anytime you see a little box right here, that means we have to execute that step. Sorry, my stove is beeping in the background. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, and then I need to designate which model is the splint model. And it's going to be a lower. And now it also wants me to designate the opposing. It could probably figure that out on its own, but it doesn't. Now we need to set the landmarks. And this is always going to be on the upper model. And it tells you right up top, click the right molar, and you can follow these directions. I'm not going to read them for you, but you can always figure out what you're doing if you get lost. I like to go from the mesiolingual cusp, and now it's asking me to go to the incisal edge, and now the midline, and I usually go right in here to the incisive papilla. Well, I guess that's, anyway, the lingual papilla. Here we go. So now we can go ahead and click finish. I mean, you can move this around and make sure it looks right. If you can always grab one of these points and you can move it if you want. But I didn't actually want to do that. But that just goes to show you if you do something incorrectly, you can always fix it. Click finish now. So now it shows you this virtual articulator, which is cool and fancy looking, but honestly, it isn't necessary. It's more just so you can kind of relate this to what you're used to in the physical world. Okay, so now we can change the articulator values. If you're going to be doing a lot of movements, if you've done draw tracking, if you know they have a steep angle or whatnot, you can change these values. That's very rare for me. And yeah, it's pretty rare. Unless someone has a really deep bite, do I get into those settings at all. Changing the pin setting, I recommend always taking the digital impression with the patient's mouth open, because now I don't have to do any sort of guessing on how much to open them and how to open them. Because not everyone works the same as the articulator. If you change the pin setting, you can open them up. So let's just say I want to open them up 4 millimeters. I'm going to hit escape, so I want to zoom out here first. If I want to open this patient 4 millimeters, change pin setting, 4, click OK, see it opens the mouth up. So if you've captured the bite in a closed bite, you might need to open them up 3.5, 4 millimeters or whatnot. Again, I prefer not do that. I just hit Control Z on my keyboard to undo that. I prefer capture them in the relation I want to actually hold them in. And I use a leaf gauge to do that, and I have a video on YouTube describing that. So, okay. So now we're going to, and recover the mounting, all that does is if you made changes, you can always just click that, go back to normal. I don't use the check clearance because I don't need to, because that's just, well, it's checking for how open it is. So now I'm just going to go ahead and click on Survey Model. Survey Model is determining your path of insertion. Okay, so let's just start off right in the default. Let's click Capture View. So right now you'll see that the gray on here is where it's going to be blocked out. It's very shadowed. There's no gray in the lingual because the view, this angle, is actually from the distal. We would never have it set up that way. We can do it a number of ways, but really what we're trying to do is you can use these little buttons and say tweak it anterior, and it will progressively move it forward. Posterior would be the opposite. Left and right would be like this. So what I do is I just look straight down the model how I think I want to do it. I should be able to see a little bit of the facial surface, a little of the lingual, and go from there. Click Capture, and then I assess. I can see down here at the gingival margins there's some shadowing. Not really any in here, that's not a surprise, but there is some down here in the lingual of these lower molars, and that's very common. It's pretty much unavoidable. So I'll tell you that that's pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. I can use these little buttons to tweak it slightly if I need to, but I'm pretty happy with it as is. So I'm going to go ahead and click Commit. Once I've done that, I can then go ahead and hit Save. It's going to require you to save your case. And I'm going to name this Lower Flat Plane All right, so now that I've saved it, I can go ahead and click Refractory Model. And what is a refractory model? A refractory model is a model of the teeth that has the undercuts blocked out. So I've been playing around with my settings a little bit here. This is going to be different than my previous videos. What I've done mostly is I've really upped the undercut up to 0.14. And the offset can be just about anything. I've gone all the way down to 03, 06, 09. For this case, I'm actually going to leave it at stock, because I'm trying to get closer and closer to not having to mess with settings. Although I don't think I'm ever going to be able to, I should say I need to mess with this setting, but maybe I can eliminate having to mess with the offset. So let's just see if this fits her, and we're going to leave it. I know that 014 and 016 will work, but it might be a bit snug. And I've had one patient this week comment on hers being extremely tight. So yeah, we're going to be making her a looser one. So let's go ahead and just try this and see how it fits in her mouth. We're going to click OK. Again, I think the undercut engagement is the most important thing. And with today's materials, we can thermoform them, or we can heat treat them, place them in some boiling water for a little bit to soften it up a little bit, to allow those undercuts to be deflected just a littlest bit so that we can get it in and out. Okay, so here is our refractory model with these undercuts blocked out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to mark the splint margin. Where do we actually want the splint to fit? Now we want to get beneath the undercuts, of course, because otherwise what's the point of having the undercuts engaged? Now you can go wherever you want with this. Where I put it is not necessarily where you need to, but what I tend to do is right along the gingival margin everywhere. Some would opt to not cover the entire teeth in certain areas, but in the lowers you kind of have to, because otherwise there's not going to be area for the upper teeth to contact. So yeah, I suppose you could remove it from the lingual aspect, bring it up there so it was more just setting up over the incisal edge and the facial. That would be fine. I don't really feel there's any point in it, and if I ever really wanted to, I could take a burr and relieve it. So I just was marking each point, and you can mark them however you want. When you're all done, when you're ready to finish, as you drag and get closer, you'll see that this little green line wants to connect the two of them. So I click right there, and now it's one solid line. Now you do need to look around and see what the color of the line is. If it's all blue, you're good to go. But I'm going to drag some of these just to try to cause an error. Let's drag it up here. Oh, I gotta pause. All right, sorry about that. So I'm trying to create a problem. You'll see either an orange or red line if I can. See this red line? Now it's going to try to resolve it on its own. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, what you need to do is you need to go in and add some more points. See how it's falling through the model right there? That's why. So once I've done that, it's created this one, now it fixed it. So anyway, once in a while, you'll get these, and it's trying to figure out a way to fix it on its own. Okay? So I actually, by showing you that, I created more problems than anything. I feel like if I right-click on the node, it'll erase it maybe. Oh, good grief. Yeah, it will. So I can just simplify this by getting rid of a bunch of these lines. Or a bunch of these nodes, I should say. Look at all those. Hold the shift button to move this around. I need to get rid of this. There we go. All right. Okay. Is that going to fix itself? No. All right. So now we're done. Again, I didn't actually have any problems. I created problems simply for the opportunity to show you what will happen and how to fix it if you do. So now that we have marked our perimeter, and you can follow these directions here if you get lost at all. They're always here. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And now it wants me to do is to, we got a little eyedropper here. You're going to click on one side or the other of the line. So I'm going to obviously click on the inside, but that's the area that is the splint. It's just a way to confirm for the software which part did you want to be the splint. Anyway, click Next, and now it's going to show you a nice clean cut line, like it's a totally separate surface basically. And now I click Next, and now I'm done with that. So the Splint Shell is basically just kind of like a thermoformed model. We're just going to click on this and determine our thickness that we want. I usually go to about 1.74, 1.77, whatever. It's not really that important, as you'll see in a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and click it OK. And it's going to create, again, a uniform shell, 1.7 millimeters, based on that dimension, all around everything. Now, some software companies stop here. I personally strongly disagree with this because you're going to get second molar, first molar contact first before anything else hits, and you're going to cause some issues, possibly intrusion of teeth or extrusion of other teeth, or at least inappropriate, I guess, occlusal load, causing issues in the joints, causing issues in the teeth, lots of problems. So I do not recommend a simple shell. There are times when I use this for other appliances, but not for this, certainly not for this. So now you can click on this. I thought this wasn't mandatory anymore, but all this does is confirms that it gives you an opportunity to make sure everything's a minimal thickness of 1 millimeter, which mine always are because, well, I open the bite up enough to allow for that. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to mark the occlusal curves. So for this, we're basically going to be making what you may know as a wax rim, which is what's used in dentistry. It's where you set your teeth. And so we need to make sure that it's wide enough to contact the entire occlusal surface, okay? And so you'll see what I mean in a moment if that doesn't make sense with that description alone. I can't remember if I can... I want to get rid of, the instructions. That's what I want. There we go. All right. I'm basically clicking the furthest most buccal areas, so the laterals barely really factor into that. Sometimes I'll skip teeth, I'll skip cusps, whatever. It doesn't really matter. So now I've done the maxillary. I need to do the mandibular. And so you can see this is the outside line. I'm going to come in here. And I'm going to stay as lingual as I can on these incisors. In fact, I don't even want those centrals factored in because they're slightly buccal. And I should mention that as this software updates, I'll change the way I do things. And so 6 months from now, I might have a different workflow. That's just how it goes. And I'm all done. So now I can go ahead and click Commit. So once I've done those, you might be like, well, what was that purpose? Well, now we're going to say Splint Wax Rim. Now, I just leave this as is. Sometimes I'll have to increase some of these numbers. We don't have to right now in this case, but just so you know, you have the ability to do that. And what it is here's that splint, or this wax rim. It's as wide as those points are on the outside and as wide as it is on the inside of the lower ones. So it just creates this nice wax rim. Now it does stick inside of these teeth up here, and in fact our splint shell is also inside of our teeth down here on the bottom teeth, so that's okay, don't worry about that, that's not a problem. You want it too big. Just like if you're doing a denture, you don't want to start off with wax rims where you have to keep adding wax to it. You start with it too big so you can proceed to carve it down. Okay, so now we're going to fuse the rim to the shell. It's going to make these two pieces into one. Simple enough. Now we've got one solid object. So we can remesh and smooth. If we click on that, it's just going to kind of smooth everything out a bit so it's not as steep of a transition. You can click it again. I quite often would do it twice. Now, the thing about it is that's an old school method because nowadays the block out large concavities button right here, which is going to try to block out anything, it's not going to do much on the lower. It does much more in the upper on the lingual anterior because this wax rim tends to be inside the shell or lingual too. But I still click it, and when it does it, it tries to block out these undercuts and it smooths it. You can see where it blocked it out right there. So anyway, at this point you could be done if you wanted. If you want to smooth this out even more, unfortunately there's no automated way to do that right now. And that's the problem with doing lower appliances because you get this lip. And so you could leave it as is, or if you want to smooth that, you can go into the sculpt tools. It's not mandatory to do this, but I'm going to click on this this right here, and I'm going to go to the inflate. Now, I'm going to be very blunt about this. I am by no means a a blender expert, so other people could be much more effective in this tool. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here and I'm basically just inflating this by dragging my mouse around a bit. And I find that the faster you move your mouse, the more it does, but I don't know if that's just my mind playing tricks on me or what. I don't care how pretty it looks, because I'm going to use that remesh and smooth again to kind of smooth out any lumps and bumps that I've created. I'm just trying to get this inflated fairly quickly and efficiently. All right, we're getting close. And you do want to look straight at anything you're doing. Unlike some softwares where it's really nice to look at the side as you're doing it, like from the profile, it doesn't work as well. You need to look straight at what you're trying to fill in. Okay? So that's good enough for me, because now I'm going to turn off this paint sculpt. So I want this to go away. And I'm going to click remesh and smooth again. And maybe I'll do it again. There we go. So that looks pretty good to me. You can smooth it as much as to your heart's content, and you can also increase this if you want to just have it do bigger smoothings per smooth. Anyway, okay, so here's the next important step, the most important step of this process. We're going to mark the posterior contacts. So what that does is first we're going to click here, anywhere we have a high point, a cusp. And you'll see what this does. There you go. It's starting to create the flat plane. And what a lot of people fail to understand or to explain is, like I never learned this in dental school, but a flat plane appliance is not flat. It's just flat to the occlusal plane. And what I mean by that is if you were to set this model on a counter, it would rock all over the place because the teeth are not all in the same plane. But what we're trying to do is create a surface that sort of flows like you imagine you were using this as tent poles and you draped a tarp over top of it. How would it look? That's the flat plane. Okay. If you find areas where they're very large, I'll grab this and try to find the highest point, trying to make the little areas poking through as small as possible. Not super critical, but a little bit of extra time doing that can possibly save you effort at insertion. I haven't really found. I very rarely need to do any post-op, insertion adjustments anyways, but that might be because I always kind of control those. And that's it. So now I'm going to click next. Oh, I'm going to turn this. This allows us to erase some of these areas. If we don't want some of it, I can erase and paint, but I'm not going to. I'm going to click commit. And so watch what happens. I'm going to turn, you don't need to do this. You do not need to do what I'm going to do here. But I'm going to go ahead and turn on the Splint Shell. You can see how it's sticking through these teeth, kind of invading these teeth. And you see where the red line is, this red plane. I'm going to click subtract posterior plane. There, it's gone. It just cut all that part out. So the teeth are just barely touching. So this is a flat plane appliance. At this point, you could say you're done. Okay? Now we're going to take it a step further. Right here, I'm going to click create functional surface. Now this is one of those tasks that could have been done behind the scenes if we did an auto background. Okay? There's a few different things, the minimal thickness, and then I can't remember what else it is. There's like 3 different major steps, and there might be the Splint Shell. I can't remember. There's 3 different things that happen in the background that save you time, but this is the biggest time-saving one, because watch what happens. I'll tell you what's happening. So the software is, imagine it's on that articulator, and it's moving the jaw in all the different functional ways, and it's recording them. And it's creating that tent pole idea of where the teeth would move as the jaw is moving around. Okay? So what we can do is now we can remove this functional surface from, let's go ahead and turn on the splint again. Let's turn off the maxilla. Again, you don't have to do this, but you can see where there are areas where the splint is invading or is sticking through this functional plane. So when I click on this subtract functional surface, all those pieces go away. So the idea is that now not only can the patient close down, but they can slide around with freedom. We're trying to make it so the patient, they can touch and they can slide and everything remains in contact at all times. Is it perfect? No, it's a simulation, and that articulator is based off of, average numbers. Again, you could dial it in, get those numbers really close, and it would improve things. But this is the point, is to try to eliminate or at least greatly minimize your chair time. So again, technically we're done here. I'm going to click on this button, which is grind MIP, which basically is like taking your models and just gridding them together a little bit so that you really help the patient to find those spots where the upper cusps fit into the model. Now, if you don't like the smoothness of this, sometimes it'll be really rough, or like it'll have really sharp edges and you just don't like that. Well, you can click Remesh Smooth. It smooths it, but be sure to go ahead and subtract at least the functional surface again. Okay? I know now it's just not quite as sharp because you removed it, you smoothed it, and removed it again. There's not as much for it to remove. You could do that as many times as you want until it looks as smooth as you want. Realistically, you're going to 3D print this or mill it, and it's going to come out pretty darn nice. And you can always polish it up on your own. So that is it for the generation of this night guard. If I wanted to, I could scroll down and I could say, I haven't done is I haven't finalized it. We're going to get to that in a second. This first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a print raft. Now, you don't have to do this. If you want to print it differently on supports, whatever, you can skip this step. I don't want to do that, okay? So I'm going to do this. Let me show you what a print raft is. And I apologize, this part of the video you might want to fast forward through later on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it I want to put the print raft right here. On upper ones, it works really well. Lower ones, not as well. And I'll explain in a minute. Click there. I'm telling it, I'm using my left click just to tell the software this is where I want you to add this. And I click Add Print Raft. Click OK. And here's the print raft. What this does is it allows me to, I'm going to try to flip this around. When I print it, I can print it right on this without any supports, and this little platform will adhere to the print bed. And everything else is just built up upon it, and that way I have very minimal adjustment. Now again, like I said, the upper ones, this works really well. The lower ones, the problem is this area right up here is where you have those rest stops for your upper anterior teeth. So it can cause a problem, more adjustments than you want to. So another option is to instead, I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that, is to click back here and say Add Print Raft. Now, I haven't ever messed with this. I'm going to change this to, instead of 45 degrees, I'm going to go 180 from that. So 225. And let's see what we get. That didn't really work. But that's okay. It doesn't really matter. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this red line and tip it. I want the bevel. I just actually designed this print raft. Patrick, who designed the software, added it for me. You want the bevel towards the print bed. That's what allows you to get an instrument underneath there to kind of pop it off. Okay, so now it's pretty well positioned. I can move it around like this, kind of get it centered. And now I can edit it by making it wider. Right now it is 18. I'm going to go with all the way up to 60 and see what that looks like. Pretty darn good, actually. I can see that it's embedded within that heel a little bit. So let's go ahead and rotate it a little bit till it looks about even. And then I can move it back a little bit. And then maybe over just a little bit. I'm getting picky at this point. So at this point, I'm liking this. I can tip it more if I want to, and maybe I will. bring it back to make sure it's fully supporting those heels. And now I've got one big platform that after I print, I'll just have to cut it out. I don't even care if it invades these the tooth well areas, and you'll see why in a moment. Once I've got this positioned, and I might ask Patrick if there's a way that we can tell it to add it to the lingual instead, but I wouldn't expect that to be added anytime soon, if ever at all. So I know he's got a lot of other projects he's working on. So anyway, I've added it. I'm going to go ahead and sorry, let me step back. If you're doing a lower appliance, this is what this video is about, I would add it to the heels. It's just going to make printing easier. Okay? So at this point, I can go ahead and say join print platform, just like we joined the wax rim to the shell. And now it's going to create both objects as one solid surface. Lastly, I'm going to click the Finalize the Splint. Because remember, you see how this is sticking out inside here? It's sort of bubbled inside. When I click this, watch what happens. And I may have to reorient it when I do this. I've clicked OK, it's calculating, it's doing a Boolean operation where there it is. Now you can see where all the teeth model, that refractory model, just got cut out of this. So there is your splint. So what I was saying earlier is if you don't want to use a print raft, you could have skipped all that and jumped right into Finalize Splint. And then you can print on supports. What I don't like about supports is it adds little things to here that we have to adjust and account for potentially in the mouth at insert. Lastly, I do like this remove small parts is very rarely used anymore, or needed, I should say. That's if you had like little anomalies, little small pieces here and there. It's usually a matter of bad scan data that causes that. So I don't remember the last time I've needed that. Hit generate report, and that just helps you to remember what was your offset, what was your undercut. That's the main thing. Okay, and it just tells you, what was your articulator values if you change those. So in case you need to later on go back and design a new one, you find something just wasn't quite right. Well, here's what it was. Oh, this was too loose, or this was too tight. Well, these are your values. So now, last thing I can do is I'll hit Export Splint STL. It's going to be in the same folder, same name already, and I can just hit Export. When I do that, the advantage is when I do that, it's going to export this as a text file. I don't have to tell it to export the report. Once I've generated it, when I hit Export Splint, it's going to do so. Okay? Now, one other kind of cool feature that's been added recently that I really like is I can actually go ahead and I can say Rayware or Envision 1. I guess that's Desktop Health software, I'm assuming. I know it's been rebranded from Envision Tech to Desktop Health. You can bring it up in a preform if you have a Formlabs printer or whatnot. So, and I guess actually you could find your actual printer software right in here if you need to. So if I click on this button, it should open up Rayware. I'm going to go ahead and click it. I don't know how. This is a fresh install on this computer, so I have never done it on this computer. It duplicates it in the orientation that the software, the printing software uses. And there it is. It is ready to print. Now you'd have to set your, this isn't the right resin and whatnot, but it is technically ready to print as is right now. So that's a nice little quick thing. That's mostly useful if you're going to be doing one splint. Now, if you keep designing splints, you keep pressing that, it won't open up new software windows. It'll keep just dropping them in here. You'll probably have to arrange them, but I've done that before where I'm designing 2 or 3 splints at a time, and I'll just keep adding it, and they just keep dropping in here. That keeps you from having to go find your saved STL and dropping it into your print software. Okay, well, I think I have covered all the newest, latest, and greatest updates of the software. If you want to hide this view, by the way, if you want to, because it can be a little annoying, click here where these little 3 lines are and drag that way, and it goes away. All right, so I hope that covers everything. Make sure at the end you go right back up and hit save, because, well, saving's always smart. You can save it as a new one if you want to, be able to go back and change, check whatever. Let's just see if I click auto background. There they are, the splint shell, minimal thickness, and functional appliance, and the functional surface. The splint shell would have been determined by these numbers right here. The default's 1.5. So that's where those are all things in the background. If you're using the auto background, you also, I don't know why it's only when it's an auto, but you also have the option of using, rather than just my rectangular platform, you can use, I don't know how to use the ribbon one, honestly, I haven't even played with it, or you can use Vouli's style, which is a little different. And I'll leave that to you to go research and see if that's something that you prefer to use. I'm happy with the rectangle, that's all I ever use. So, but I think, yeah, I hope that's about it. Hopefully this video was helpful, and if you like this video, please make sure to click the like button. Subscribe if you want to see other future videos. Check me out on Facebook and YouTube. Facebook and Instagram, Baron Grutter DDS, and yeah, and also check out my website, www.barongrutterDDS.com. I've got hundreds and hundreds of videos, tutorials like this on different things, from guided surgery to digital orthodontics, clear aligners, splint design, even some digital denture and crown and bridge design stuff. So CEREC stuff, whatever. Lots of different stuff. Yeah, I hope this video is helpful. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.